You know them when you see them. Those huge, tough-as-nails Antonov transport planes. For decades, they've been the workhorses of the skies. But right now, Russia's legendary fleet is facing a crisis that isn't happening in the air. It's happening on the ground. It's a story that starts, believe it or not, with a bunch of paperwork, and it could end with these giants being grounded for good. So how did these titans of the sky end up chained to the tarmac?
And look, this isn't some far-off problem. This quote right here, from a leaked internal assessment, it just lays it all out there. We're talking about a ticking clock, a 1.5 to 2 year deadline before one of the world's most important transport fleets might just stop flying.
So, you have to ask, right? How does a fleet that is the absolute backbone of military and state logistics get to the very brink of collapse? Well, the answer is a wild ride that goes back 2 decades. It's a story about shifting politics, supply chains that completely snapped, and a regulatory headache that started right in the middle of Europe.
Okay, so to really get where this is all headed, we first have to understand just how bad the situation is right now.
368. That's how many Antonovs are in service across Russia's Ministry of Defense, National Guard, and even the FSB. And you gotta understand, these aren't just planes. They are literal lifelines, moving everything from troops to supplies to some of the most remote places you can imagine.
And here is where the problem really hits you. Out of all those planes, almost 40% of them are just sitting there, broken, waiting for repairs. This isn't about planes lost in combat. Nope, this is about a fleet decaying from the inside out. It's a massive, staggering backlog that's just crippling their ability to get things done.
Now, to figure out where this all began, we have to rewind the clock. We're going back to 2006, when the European Union was dealing with a pretty unique growing pain of its own. So picture this. New countries from Central and Eastern Europe are joining the EU, and they're bringing their stuff with them, including their airlines. And a lot of those airlines were flying Soviet-designed planes. Think Antonov An-24s, Komov helicopters. For the European regulators, this was a huge headache. How do you standardize all of this? How do you ensure safety?
And the whole problem, it really boils down to this one piece of paper, the ESA Type Certificate. The easiest way to think about it is like a passport for an airplane's design. If you want to fly freely around the EU, your plane's design needs this passport. It proves you meet all the modern rules for safety and the environment. And the big problem? Well, these Soviet airplanes, they didn't have one.
This basically created 2 totally different worlds. On one side, you had all the planes with their shiny ESA passports, good to go anywhere. And on the other side, you had these Soviet-designed fleets staring down a hard deadline, March 28, 2007. After that date, they were grounded. For the companies flying these planes, this was, a potential death sentence.
I mean, you can just feel the mix of fear and hope in this quote from a Bulgarian airline operator back then. They were literally facing the end of their business. They and so many others were just desperate for some kind of solution, any solution, that would let them keep their planes in the sky. So the regulators were in a really tough spot. Were they really going to ground hundreds of planes and basically kill off a bunch of small airlines overnight? They had to come up with some kind of compromise.
And they did. They created a temporary workaround, this special restricted certificate. Basically, it allowed these planes to keep flying, but, and this is a big but, everyone knew it wasn't a permanent fix. It was a stopgap, a way to buy everybody some time.
And here's how the plan was supposed to work. It was a 5-year window. From 2007 to 2012, operators could either work to get their planes fully certified, get that real EASA passport, or they'd have to phase them out and get new planes. The clock was officially ticking, but at least there was a path forward.
So for the airlines inside the EU, that 5-year plan was everything. But for Russia, a single event was about to happen that would make all this regulatory stuff seem like a tiny problem. The real crisis was about to kick off.
The year is 2014. Russia's annexation of Crimea didn't just redraw maps on the news. It completely shattered the industrial relationship between Russia and Ukraine. And right at the center of that break, the Antonov company itself.
And just like that, Russia was cut off from the people who designed and built its transport fleet. Think about that. They lost access to the original engineers, the folks who knew these planes inside and out. They lost the official supply of certified spare parts. And they lost all the official support for repairs and production. The supply chain wasn't just strained, it was obliterated.
And the fallout from that break in 2014, well, that brings us right back to today. The consequences weren't immediate, but they have been slow, steady,
and absolutely devastating.
Remember that nearly 40% number we talked about? Well, here it is in stark reality. 143. That's how many Antonovs are just sitting around waiting for repairs. A massive traffic jam caused by a total lack of parts and expertise.
And of course, it's a money problem too. Aviemont, the state-run company in charge of maintenance, is in serious financial trouble. Look at these numbers. They spent billions of rubles, but they need almost double that just to deal with the planes that are already broken. On top of that, the company itself is losing a fortune, a 4.7 billion ruble loss in 2024. They just don't have the cash to fix the fleet.
This right here, this is how it all connects. It's a chain reaction. It starts with the parts shortages because they can't make them or get them. That leads to maintenance quality just falling off a cliff because the repair shops can't do the work right. And then you get to the tragic part. Fatal crashes. An An-2 that broke apart after it was supposed to be fixed. An An-26 crashed just a few months later. This isn't just a theory anymore. The risks are becoming terrifyingly real.
So when you take a step back and you look at all these pieces together, from the EU regulations in 2006 to the supply chain completely collapsing in 2014, you end up at a pretty profound place.
See, this isn't really a story about spare parts. It's bigger than that. These Antonov planes are ghosts of a different era. They were built by a Soviet system that could design, build, and maintain them all under one roof. That system is long gone, and now the planes themselves are stuck, caught between the world that made them and a new, fractured world that can no longer support them.
And that leaves us with this final, hanging question. We can see the numbers, we can see the rust and the decay, but what's the real cost of a supply chain that's been broken beyond repair? How much longer can these grounded giants sit and wait for a fix that might just never arrive before that ticking clock we heard about finally runs out?